It's another season here on Steelers Talk by Chat Sport, but unfortunately it's the same song, the same dance. The Pittsburgh Steelers finish the season 10-7, and they get blown out in the first round of the playoffs. This time by a final score of 30-6, and just plain simply, guys, this year's Pittsburgh Steelers team, I thought, had a chance to be different and win a playoff game. I thought, this team gave us the best chance to win a playoff game in a little while. Unfortunately, like I said, it's the same song and the same dance, and I think a lot of us are tired of it here in Steelers Nation. Welcome into the Steelers Talk postgame show, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm pretty upset. I'm pretty sad that this season has come to a close, and, the Steelers season went out with the whimper that they had in that fourth quarter that we're going to talk about on today's show. But tomorrow we start our coverage of the 2026 offseason. Should be pretty entertaining with, $60+ million in cap space, 12 draft picks. We're going to have extensive coverage on any defensive coordinator search or maybe a head coaching search, quarterback search if Aaron Rodgers retires. But make sure you guys click that subscribe button because I'm sure it's going to be a very eventful offseason here in Pittsburgh. And, of course, if Mike Tomlin gets fired or decides to leave the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're going to be going live whenever that news breaks. So make sure you click that subscribe button to never miss a thing. All right, so let's get into this game, man. I don't think this final score is indicative of how close this game was for three quarters, but, it just became an avalanche. There was a Fumble Six that ended up giving the Texans a two-possession lead, and then after that, the Steelers were kind of forced in the fourth quarter to press against this Houston Texans defense that you just cannot be put in that position and expect to have success. You score 6 points on the day. 3 of them were gifted to you from a fumble on C.J. Stroud where you get the ball at the 21. You can't even finish in the end zone. Plain simply, the Texans defense just dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers offensively, and we'll talk about that quite a bit in this game. But this game was competitive for three quarters. It was 10-6 in the fourth quarter, but kind of like that Bills game a couple years ago, you had a chance in the fourth quarter, and then, you completely blow it there in the fourth. And frankly, the better team, the better football team won this football game. And congratulations to the Texans, but I do have some takeaways. I got quite a few of them, actually. To get into, and plain simply, guys, what this game comes down to is, once again, this Pittsburgh Steelers offense was not good enough. I think the Steelers offense was better than it was in years past. There's just no, questioning that, in my opinion. This was the best Steelers offense we've had in a while, but you accompany that with a defense that took a step back as a unit this year, and you kind of get into the same spot. Like, if this defense was playing really top-notch football, and the defense played fine for most of this game, but this offense going up against that defense, that defense is so good, but, you just couldn't do anything all day long. We can talk about some of the reasons for that. A big reason was you were living in 3rd and long, okay? And a big reason why you were living in 3rd and long in this game, and I don't know how many third downs they had in this game, frankly, but most of them were in 3rd and 7 or longer. A lot of them in 3rd and 10 or longer, because on first down, they would run an unsuccessful run play, lose 2 yards, and they would run a screen play that would get no yards, and then you're sitting in 3rd and 12, and you got the best pass rusher duo in football pinning their ears back, and they can win with 4, get after a quarterback that, obviously doesn't move the best anymore, and, that was the recipe for failure for the Pittsburgh Steelers today. You needed to stay ahead of the sticks. They did that actually pretty decently in the first 2 drives of this game, where they were converting first and 2nd down, and they were, not getting to 3rd down, but every time they got into 3rd down in this game, man, it seemed like it was into 3rd and long situations, and that's just not where you want to live if you're going up against the Houston Texans. And there's a lot of reasons why the Steelers failed at that. I thought they ran it too much, were too predictable on first downs. They got it to Jonnu Smith on too many screens. And then also that Texans defense is just really, really freaking good. But then another Fumble Six. All right, we saw it in the Bills game. Another game where the Steelers got ran off the field on and dog walked. On their home stadium this year, and inside their home stadium this year, and that's really a recipe for failure when you're giving up a Fumble Six. And the Steelers actually won the turnover battle today. They had 3 turnovers to the Texans 2. One of them really in before garbage time. And out of those 3, Steelers only score 3 points. Texans score 7 on their 1 fumble. So sometimes it's not the total amount of turnovers; it's what you do with those turnover opportunities. Unfortunately, the Steelers didn't do enough in theirs, and the Texans definitely flipped the game, and that was the game-changing play right there that completely turned this in the favor of the Texans. Also, there's some missed opportunities in the first half of this game. It seems like, this has been a Steelers offense that has really needed to work up into the second half, and they weren't doing anything all game long against this Texans defense. But DK Metcalf dropped a corner route early in this game that would have gone for a big gain, if not a touchdown, that really seemed to loom large in this game. The Steelers would have had that fumble six wouldn't have mattered as much as it did if DK catches that football. You pay DK Metcalf $30 million a year to make those catches. Today he finishes with 2 catches for 42 yards on 5 targets. You got to get him some help in this wide receiver room. Plain and simply, DK is not good enough by himself to lead this wide receiver room. He needs a really good 1B in this room to pair with him. I think that's pretty clear at this point. I also think they used Jonnu Smith way too much in this game. It's been a theme all throughout this season, in my opinion. It's been a theme throughout Arthur Smith's tenure where he's getting it to Jonnu Smith, too much. He's playing him too much. He can't block, can't run routes. He doesn't have particularly good hands. And honestly, I didn't think, his run after ability this year was all that great as well. I think when you look at a guy like Jonnu Smith, he's a guy that I'm looking to trade or cut this offseason. He was that bad. And there's just no way he should have the kind of role he had in the offense this year, next year. And then, they give the ball to Jonnu Smith, and they waited till it was way too late to give it to Pat Freiermuth. I said going into this game, if Muth has a big game tonight, I think the Steelers have a chance to win it. He didn't have a big game tonight, so, obviously they got ran off the field. So, if I'm Muth, I'm pissed at the Steelers this year for not using me in the correct ways until essentially Darnell Washington got injured. And then even then, in the biggest game of the year, in the wild card round, in a game where, we're trying to avoid a 7th straight playoff loss here with this franchise, I'm not getting fed. And Jonnu Smith, of all people, is getting more prioritization in this offense this week. I would be livid if I were Pat Freiermuth. I hope he's back next year, but it would not shock me if he wants out, especially with Darnell Washington returning next year. But I love Pat Freiermuth, guys. I hope he's back. He's a damn good receiving tight end. So point the finger for me down there in the comment section. Who's the most to blame for the loss today? Is it Tomlin? Is it Omar Khan? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it somebody else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. I think for me, the lack of a legit number 2 wide receiver was a big reason why you lost this game. You weren't able to be more competitive on offense, and I blame Omar Khan for that. Also, Mike Tomlin. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about our sponsor, let me know who's the blame for tonight's loss in the wild card of the round of the playoffs. Now let's have a word from our sponsor at Prize Picks, and it is officially the new year, guys. In my opinion, this is the best time of the year for watching sports, when you're not watching the Steelers get blown out in the playoffs. Bowl games, playoff games, basketball and hockey season now in full swing as well. It's all happening all at once, and while all that action is going on, there's one place where it feels so good to be right. That's Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is that how you play is up to you guys. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're feeling really strong about a particular lineup and want a bigger payout, you can go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. Tonight I took the less on C.J. Stroud. Passing yards, he got more than that. I took the more on Kenny Gainwell receptions. I think he had 3, if I'm not mistaken. No, he got 4. So I guess I got that one. And Pat Freiermuth, I took the more. He got less tonight. So unfortunately, Ponzi and I did not walk away with a playoff win or any money from our friends at Prize Picks. But download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. To finish out my thoughts on the defense, guys, or on the offense, I should say, tip your cap to that defense, okay? That Houston Texans defense is so good, and, the Steelers offense was outclassed today, and sometimes that happens, and that's frustrating because, this roster, once again, wasn't good enough to compete with these level teams. But, man, that Texans defense was the defense that Mike Tomlin thought he was building here in Pittsburgh this year, where they play so much man, and they just cover everybody up. They win with 4. That is a damn good defense right there, man. One of the best I've seen in a long time, and they took care of business tonight. So tip your cap to those guys. They were the better team today, and the reason why they were the better team today is because that defense, put belt to ass for 4 straight quarters, and they deserved the win because of that. Now we shift our focus to the defensive side of the ball. Kyle Duggar, he's done here in Pittsburgh. I didn't think he necessarily played like an awful game in this game, but Chuck Clark started tonight, guys. Like, that should tell you exactly what the Steelers feel about Kyle Duggar at this point in the season. Next year, I would guess Jalen Ramsey is back at safety with Deshaun Elliott playing the other safety position. I'm sure they may draft a safety next year to be that third safety in the rotation and a future starter, but I appreciate Kyle Duggar for his service to this team and coming in after the Deshaun Elliott injury. He played some good weeks, had some good ball for this team, but Kyle Duggar is certainly going to be one of the odd men out in 2026, in my opinion. Another guy that could be on the outs in terms of at least a starting role next year is Brandon Echols, and holy cow, did he get beat multiple times today. Christian Kirk finished with 144 yards receiving today and a touchdown. That's one of the guys you maybe could have tried to get at the trade deadline. Kirk is a guy that the Steelers have shown a lot of interest in, and he showed why tonight, man. He completely cooked Echols in man coverage multiple times, multiple big gains, and Echols just couldn't keep up. So, I think Echols has had, for the most part, a pretty good season. I still think he's probably more of like a good backup. Maybe you find a good slot corner next year. Maybe you put Ramsey back in the nickel next year and you get like a legitimate running mate for, Deshaun Elliott, something they probably should have done to start this season. But Echols, he's on a 2-year deal, so he will be back next year, at least unless they cut him, which I don't think they will. But he's a good backup, that can play inside or out. But, after tonight, I don't know if I want him starting in the slot for the Steelers next year. But another thing the Steelers got to address, in my opinion, and I don't know if they will, especially if Mike Tomlin is still here, is they got to address nose tackle. All right, there's points in this game where Keanu Benson was a complete liability out there in run defense, not anchoring, all these things that we've talked about with Keanu Benson all season. I think Keanu's a good player. I want to make that abundantly clear. But they don't use him correctly. They put him in the middle of this defense where he gets a shit ton of double teams, and he gets driven backwards, and he's not a good player on early downs in terms of run defense. All it takes is for him to be blown off of his gap, and there's an open lane for the opposing team. We saw that multiple times tonight. The Houston Texans ran for 164 yards. They came into today's game ranked the 30th rushing offense in the league in rushing EPA per rush. That implies with the rushing, but then also the rushing success rate. This is not a good rushing team today, guys. They put up 164 rush yards on you. It all starts in the middle with that run plugger, and they got to find somebody to fill that role very, very quickly, in my opinion. Also, I know there's going to be a lot of calls for Mike Tomlin's job, and listen, man, I don't really blame people for wanting him to leave. For Christ's sake, he's tied with Marvin Lewis for the most playoff losses in a row. All right, I don't blame people for wanting change and for, maybe trying to start over and, all these different things. I don't blame Steelers Nation for that take. However, I don't think Art Rooney II, the owner of this team, who's never fired a coach, is very proud of the fact that this team has never fired a head coach in the Super Bowl era, is going to fire one with as much money as that's left on Tomlin's deal and is coming off a division championship. I just think that he's going to want Tomlin back. Now, will Tomlin want to come back? We'll see. If Rodgers and Cam Hayward retire, I could see, Tomlin saying, you know what, you guys can embrace a rebuild. I'll go somewhere else, and you guys can get a nice little trade haul for me. I could see that playing out. We'll just have to see how it all plays out in the weeks to come, but I would still say I would say the most likely situation is that Mike Tomlin is back next year, Aaron Rodgers is back at quarterback, Arthur Smith is back at OC. Cam Hayward is back next year. If you're looking for change, I think the one major change in the coaching staff that we hopefully would see if Mike Tomlin stays is a change at defensive play caller and defensive coordinator. Tara Lawson has not been up to snuff in his 4 years here in Pittsburgh. Plain and simply, this defense has continuously underperformed in his time here, and I think it's time for a new voice. And honestly, if Tomlin decides to leave, I'd be excited for a new voice in Pittsburgh. Bring on Brian Flores as far as I'm concerned if he wants to go. But I do think there is hope for the future, guys. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. I understand it's been the same script for 3 years in a row. 10 wins under Mike Tomlin, followed by a playoff berth and then a pretty much blowout loss in the playoffs. I think the Steelers were more competitive in this one than in some of the other years, but obviously the offense just wasn't good enough tonight. But like, this is a roster that is still, in a pretty decent spot. You've got all three of your edge rushers under contract next year. You've got most of, your team, under contract. You just got to figure out the quarterback, your two other starting wide receiver positions. You got to lock down your left guard situation, re-sign Kenny Gainwell to reaffirm this running back duo. You get a number 2 corner, maybe you get a slot corner, but like, there's not that much, and the Steelers have like over $60 million in cap space next year. That's before the cuts and before restructures, so they're going to have more than that. They got top 10 cap space, and they got 12 draft picks next year. So this is a team that can easily address their needs in 2026, and especially if Rodgers comes back for another season, if you get a defensive coordinator that knows what the fuck they're doing, like Raheem Morris, for example, who, if Tomlin stays, I think we actually get Raheem Morris if he doesn't get another head coaching job. And then you give Rodgers a couple more good receiving threats that can actually separate versus man coverage. I mean, this Steelers team can be back next year with a vengeance. Rodgers would be in the second year of a system. He gets a full offseason with his guys. I'm looking at this offseason, guys, as one, at least I'm going into it with some hope. I know there's a lot of despair in Steelers Nation right now, but I'm telling you, man, the Steelers are not that far away. Whatever changes need to be made to get us to that next step, I'm all for. So let me know down there in the comment section, is it time? Should Mike Tomlin step away as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers? I'm guessing most of the people in the chat that are really upset about the result of this game is going to be yes. And honestly, at this point, if Tomlin wanted to step down, I feel like I would be okay with that, and I'd be excited for a new head coach to come in here in Pittsburgh. But just some final thoughts here before we say goodbye. I just want to thank all of you guys for supporting the channel this year. I'm greatly disappointed that this Steelers team wasn't able to get us a win in the postseason. But at the end of the day, man, I do think that we're going into this offseason with a lot of good players on this team, with an offensive line that's on the up and up for the first time in a long time, with a defensive line that is very talented, with a defense that played its best football, generally speaking, towards the end of the season, and with some positive momentum there. I know it really does hurt right now, and trust me, I'm feeling it, guys. I really am, and I'm open to any and all changes that could get this team to the next level. But I do think that the Steelers, winning a division championship this year is a step in the right direction. This is a season with Aaron Rodgers. If this is, his only season here in Pittsburgh, it's going to be one that I remember forever, where he comes in here, sweep the Ravens, win the division championship. Those things matter to me, man. It's the first division championship since I've been the host of this channel, guys, and I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for your support. I know it hurts right now, but hopefully this team can find some ways to make this team better heading into 2026, and hopefully next year we're sitting here on Wild Card Weekend as victors instead of swallowing yet another loss like we are tonight. All right, man, that'll be it for me tonight. I really do appreciate your guys' support. Tomorrow we're going to get 2 Steelers videos out to you guys, probably a Mike Tomlin replacements video in the morning, and then we'll get some film reactions to you guys. Some of our final film takeaways of the year will be in the afternoon. So greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Thank you guys for making it to the end of the video with me here, guys. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.